As Oz historians, the thing that we are most interested in knowing about everyone we've been talking to is, what was your first experience with the Oz fandom, with the greater Oz world?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, my interaction with the greater Oz world. I mean, I wonder if do you speak of the fans of Wicked the musical, or do you speak of just
All of it. Like your very first interaction with Oz ever.
In your lifetime.
Oh, in my lifetime. That was when I was 4 years old, and I watched The Wizard of Oz on the TV that used to play every Easter. This is The Wizard of Oz, starring Judy Garland and Billy Burke, and I looked forward to it every Margaret Hamilton as the Witch of the West. I look forward to it every year, and was terrified when the witch would. I mean, she kind of swirled around at that one. When she first comes to Munchkinland, she swirls around, and then fireworks go off, and I don't know if she flies off. It's been a bit of time, actually, before I was designing Wicked, since I've seen that moment. But
mine was the same. Watching The Wizard of Oz when I was young. It was so scary. So exciting. Yeah. And then I have two daughters, and I took them to see Wicked when it opened on the stage, and we celebrated 20 years on the London stage during our filming. So I guess probably about 22 years now it's been running for, roughly. So I had the pleasure of taking them 7 or 8 times because they loved it so much. And then lucky I got to work on the film with Paul.
That's amazing. We've had a sneak peek of those infamous shoes in the trailers. What was your inspiration for the style of those shoes?
It was originally my inspiration was the ruby slipper, and because of how iconic those slippers are, and have been since for me, since I watched the movie of The Wizard of Oz, I wanted for them to hold that same kind of position and energy for all the fans of Wicked, coming to see that film. So that defined what that shape would be. It's a heel that feels very, very much like a 1930s heel. It's spooled, and then the scale of the foot overall is much more, and the shape of the toe again is more of a 1930s shape. But then I, put my own twist on it. I mean, it wasn't going to be a ruby slipper. It actually couldn't be a ruby slipper. And in honor of the story, it ended up being, or it's written to be, a silver slipper with crystals, with jewels. So taking that as a springboard, I wanted to make it into a piece of jewelry, really. The gift that the governor gave to his daughter. But if you look closely at the heel, that is a tornado that spirals up from the base up to the heel, the back of the heel, and then it opens up in a swirl that wraps around the foot. So it is a bit of an Easter egg that kind of carries the idea of the tornado.
Cynthia Erivo mentioned that very early on in the process, she was very thoughtful about her hair, how she wanted that to look. How collaborative was that process with you figuring out what the witches would be?
Cynthia's very collaborative in every way, but in the very early days, going back to before Cynthia was in the country, I sent the references I had to John, because of course it needs John's, Paul had seen it, of course, it needs John's approval always. And once John and Mark Platt were happy, they forwarded it on to Cynthia, and she loved the idea. It's very important. She's got a tiny little head to keep it tucked to her head, because Paul had a long way to go with the witch's hat and the black cloak, and you had to keep, give Cynthia, leave her face free and everything. So it had a lot of thought behind it, but it also needed a story arc so she could develop and use her hair as well visually. And the style gave her everything.
We know that you have a Wicked clothing line in Target, and what many Oz fans, Oz collectors, and people in the Oz community want to know, When can we buy those shoes in the stores?
You mean the silver slippers?
Yes,
Oh,
those
yes, we
silver
do.
slippers, yes.
We'll have to talk to Target. You can get a version of those. You can get a bedroom slipper. You know, a nice, comfy,
Yes,
fuzzy
yes,
bedroom
I have
slipper.
those. I have those.
But I'll let you know when
Okay,
you get
please,
it.
yeah.
Perfect. Please let us be. Please let us be the first to know because we're ready.
Okay.
So, the Wicked Witch of the West, Glinda the Good, these are well-established characters. We all know them. So I'd love to know, how did both of you go about putting your original stamp on something that is so instantly recognizable?
Do you want to start? Would you like
No,
to-
you start now.
I mean, I go back to the original film, and as the first inspiration, and thinking about Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, that silhouette, which is an 1890s silhouette, the shape of the sleeve and the fullness of the skirt. What I was hoping to create was a backstory. If that is the center or the icon of the Wicked Witch of the West, for Elphaba, how did she get to that place? So I was thinking about, okay, so with the color, her color palette of black and being in mourning and the land of Munchkin Land where she's from, having, incorporating all these elements that feel a little bit Victorian, that reflect the silhouette of the Wicked Witch of the West, but in a youthful way. And then it gives us a place to give her, an emotional arc where she is shedding that style and that she moves into something that's much more agile and free and really, speaks to just Elphaba embracing, her own being, her own power. So that was, really what was my intention, as I was creating the look for Elphaba.
And for me, we certainly had the discussion with John, and Paul was there as well, about whether we would ever consider any prosthetics, because it's such a definite face shape going back to the original one with the long chin and the nose. But it was within the same conversation, nearly in the same sentence, it was decided we were not going there. So we really just had to bring Elphaba and what Cynthia would bring to Elphaba into the visual side of it. We did not go as far as prosthetics.
And how about for Glinda?
Glinda, for me, again, I would say the Billy Burke, because of the color palette, the pink, that very wonderful, it's actually my favorite color of pink. We see that reflected in the bubble dress that Ariana, arrives in, or Glinda arrives in at the top of our film. Starting there and using that as a point of reference, that pink as a point of reference to define, her whole color palette was very important. Also the qualities of effervescence, of butterflies caught in the air, of bubbles that trail and spiral, and you see those as things that run throughout, but definitely, quite literally on her bubble dress. There's there are spirals of bubbles that trail around the shapes that create her dress. There are butterflies that dapple on her shiz blouse. With her Ozdust dress, there's a beautiful pink that ombres into a golden tone, and those colors are found in nature. I mean, and directly relate to nature, which I find is timeless. So it allows for it to be a much more fantasy-driven design as well because of that.
And for me as well, very much with the hair, we never ever considered her being a structured hairdo or anything overdone. It was always following the free flow of the lines of the bubbles and everything, the curls and the waves, keeping it very whimsical, letting Ari be able to do her toss. I mean, we use different colours in the wigs. They're very subtle, but they do tell the story. It's just that people, unless they know what they're looking at, they won't really be aware. But for the shiz, we kept her much warmer golds and and slightly straighter, and then as she progressed to Glinda, we went to the much longer, paler blondes, and then put in the waves and curves and everything that show both in Paul's costumes and in Jonathan's sets as well. But the whimsical look and the way Ariana used it was what makes everything work so perfectly together.